Fort Gunner, Texas, baked under the relentless July sun. Dust swirled lazily over the military compound, where steel met sand and pride ruled the air. The base was busy preparing for Civilian Military Integration Week, an annual public relations show where civilians were invited to observe training, interact with troops, and feel closer to the armed forces. Usually, it was just handshakes, photos, and safe activities, but every now and then, someone stood out. Colonel Hank Brewster, head of training and longtime combat veteran, stood tall with his arms folded, surveying the small crowd of civilians gathering near the firing range. He had that weathered face common among soldiers who'd seen too much and shared too little, and the ego that comes from surviving both war and Washington. He wasn't expecting anything interesting today until she arrived. Lena Morgan didn't look like much of a threat. Mid-30s, lean, with faded jeans and a warm canvas jacket, she blended into the crowd until she stepped forward. Her voice was clear and firm. "Colonel Brewster, I'd like to try the firing range." The colonel blinked. He looked her over slowly, letting his eyes linger a little too long before chuckling loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You ever eaten held a real weapon before, sweetheart?" Several soldiers standing nearby snickered. Some civilians, too. Lena's expression didn't change. She didn't blush, didn't flinch. She just stared back at the colonel, calm and unshaken. "Just one shot," she replied. There was something in her voice, quiet but undeniable. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a challenge. It was permission being taken, not asked for. Colonel Brewster, cocky and amused, motioned to one of the privates. "Get her an M4. No mods. Let's see what she's got." The young soldier hesitated, but followed orders, retrieving a standard-issue rifle. Lena accepted it without hesitation, checked the chamber, adjusted the strap, and walked toward the firing line. "Set her up at 100 yards, Brewster said. Bullseyes painted fresh. By now, a small group had gathered around. Phones came out. People smelled entertainment. They expected a miss, a giggle, maybe a scolding from the colonel, and a return to normal programming. Lena stepped up to the line. No gear, no gloves. She didn't ask for help. She didn't fumble. Instead, she took a long breath, placed the butt of the rifle against her shoulder with practiced precision, and squared her stance. Everything about her movements changed. In that moment, fluid, focused, like flipping a switch from ordinary to something else entirely. Brewster narrowed his eyes. Then she fired. One shot, clean, sharp. It cracked through the heat-soaked air and echoed across the range. The target wobbled slightly in the wind, but no one spoke. They stared. "Check the board," Brewster ordered. A soldier jogged downrange and stared. He turned slowly. "Dead center, sir." Right through the bullseye. Silence. No one laughed this time. The colonel cleared his throat. "Let's run that again." Clay pigeons, mid-air. He barked orders, and a private loaded the thrower. 3 clays. She hits all. We buy her lunch. The targets launched fast, high, spinning. Lena moved like lightning. 3 quick shots. Boom, boom, boom. 3 clouds of shattered ceramic rained down before they ever reached the dirt. Gasps swept the crowd. The same young private who handed her the rifle whispered, "Who is she?" As he covertly filmed the scene on his phone. Colonel Brewster's mouth had tightened. He took a step forward. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Lena lowered the rifle, checked the chamber, and handed it back gently to the private. Then she looked the colonel in the eye again. "Field experience," she said. That was all. She turned and walked away, calm as before, her boots kicking up dust. The group parted to let her through, still stunned. Some stared in silence. Others whispered. A few clapped quietly. Brewster stood frozen. The sunlight seemed hotter now. Field experience? What kind of field had trained someone to hit 3 clays like that, with iron sights and 0 warm-up? As Lena disappeared from sight, Brewster's pride burned under his uniform. He had underestimated her, mocked her, publicly, and she had answered, not with words, but with a shot that could not be ignored. He nodded to the soldier beside him. Find out who she is. Everything. The private saluted and ran off. But Brewster already knew this wasn't over. That shot clean, precise, and impossible had changed something. Not just the conversation on the base, but the air, the tone, the hierarchy. And in the pit of his stomach, something even more troubling stirred. A feeling he hadn't experienced in decades. Respect. By noon the next day, Lena Morgan was the name on everyone's lips at Fort Gunner. Her perfect bullseye and clay pigeon stunt had spread like wildfire. The young private's recording of her 3 perfect mid-air shots had already gone viral. Across private military group chats, captioned, "Civilian?" The views soared. Colonel Brewster hadn't slept well. Something about her bothered him, and not just because she embarrassed him in front of his men. No, it was her stance. Her control, her complete lack of fear. That was no hobbyist. That was someone who had done more than qualify on a standard. Range. He sat in his office, coffee cold on the desk, reviewing what little the base intel officer could dig up. Lena Morgan, civilian, 34, former Department of Defense contractor, stationed overseas, no criminal history. Nothing suspicious except for the fact that over 60% of her file was redacted. Redacted. Only. Black budget operators and ghosts came back with files like that. And she had walked in like a quiet tourist and shredded every soldier's pride with a borrowed weapon. The colonel called in Sergeant Travis, the base's head of tactical evaluation. "You saw the footage?" Brewster asked. "Yes, sir. Watched it 10 times. She split one of the pigeons on the edge dead on. You don't do that with luck. Gut feeling? She's trained. Maybe special ops, though I can't say which. Can you beat her?" No, sir. That was saying something. Travis had taken silver in national marksmanship the year prior. Brewster rubbed his temple. "Get the team ready. We're setting up a live fire challenge. I want her back out there." Meanwhile, Lena sat quietly in the empty base chapel. It was cooler inside, the air still. Sunlight broke through stained glass windows, scattering colors across the rows of polished benches. She stared straight ahead, eyes fixed not on the altar, but on the brass memorial wall behind it. 50-3 names etched in metal. Some she'd known: Sergeant Dallas, Lieutenant Colton, Staff Medic Ramirez. People from her unit. She hadn't spoken their names in years. Not since Kandahar. Not since the op that went sideways, and her cover was burned by a contractor leak. The Pentagon swept it under the rug. Lives lost. Mission buried. Lena survived, but she didn't come home the same. They called her Red Viper back then. Not because she was lethal, though she was, but because she waited. She watched. And when it was time to strike, she didn't miss. After the extraction, she vanished from operations. Voluntarily. Some said she was discharged. Others claimed she was retasked. The truth was simpler. She walked away. And now, somehow, this range, this cocky colonel, had pulled her back into the current. Outside, soldiers were prepping the training ground. Word had spread. The colonel had challenged the mystery woman to a formal competition. Lena hadn't even been asked yet. Brewster was assuming she'd accept. Pride does that. She returned to the range in the afternoon, dressed the same, calm as always. Colonel Brewster stood waiting with a clipboard and a smile so forced it nearly cracked his face. "Afternoon, Miss Morgan? Fancy another round?" Lena arched a brow. Another joke or a real invite? He cleared his throat. Real invite. Civilians versus soldiers. Marksmanship trial. Public event. Think of it as ... friendly. She let the silence hang just long enough to make him uncomfortable. Then nodded. I'll need a rifle. 14. No optics. A few nearby privates raised their eyebrows. Brewster blinked. That's an antique. Exactly, Lena said. I want to keep it honest. He agreed, though he didn't like being steered. Soldiers should control the rules, not guests. As the sun began to set, the base transformed into a small arena. Word of the event had reached surrounding towns. Off-duty soldiers, families, and even a few retired vets showed up. They all wanted to see the woman who had silenced the colonel. Lena sat alone at the edge of the range, eyes closed, feeling the wind. Not analyzing it, feeling it. The same way she did in the hills of Helmand province. She'd learned to listen to her environment instead of fight it. That's how she stayed alive. Colonel Brewster, on the other hand, paced like a boxer before a title fight. He had selected his best man, Sergeant Hensley, who could shoot the wings off a fly from 300 yards. Confident, trained, loyal, Brewster walked up to Lena. You sure you're ready? She didn't open her eyes. Are you? He blinked. Excuse me? Are you ready to lose with grace? She asked, finally turning toward him. Brewster chuckled nervously and walked away without replying. Night settled in. The stage was set. 3 rounds. Timed targets. Moving clay pigeons. Final challenge. Long distance, unsupported shot. Soldiers and civilians lined the makeshift bleachers. Camera phones lit the night. The first round began. Hensley went first, solid, precise, almost perfect. Lena stepped up. 10 targets. 10 seconds. Boom. Boom. The timer stopped. 9.1 seconds. Clean sweep. Gasps swept the audience. Someone yelled. She beat the record. Brewster's jaw clenched. Second round moving. Targets at 75 yards. Hensley. 6 hits out of 10. Lena. 8. Then came the final round. 1 shot. No scope. 300 yards. Hensley hit the target just outside the center ring. Lena stepped forward, wind picking up. She adjusted slightly. 1 breath. 1 squeeze. Her bullet split Hensley's clean in half. The crowd exploded. Brewster said nothing, because no words could outshoot the truth. Colonel Brewster slammed the door to his office and dropped the folder on his desk with more force than necessary. Papers scattered. He didn't care. The base still buzzed from Lena Morgan's flawless performance, but all he could focus on was how thoroughly she'd humiliated him again. And it wasn't just pride anymore. It was curiosity. No civilian, no weekend hobbyist, no contractor with basic security clearance could shoot like that. That final shot, splitting a bullet at 300 yards, wasn't just rare. It was nearly mythical. Even among elite snipers, that shot was legendary. And she did it with an old rifle and 0 warm-up. He opened the redacted file again, scanning for anything intelligence had missed. Name. Lena Morgan, D.O.B. March 18, 1991, former employer. Department of Defense. 2012 to 2017. Designation. Field Technical. Specialist notes. Subject served in several high-risk environments. Full operational details classified per Directive 1742A. Request for deeper access requires Pentagon-level clearance. Medical note. Received commendation for injury sustained during Operation Indigo Wolf. File sealed. Operation Indigo Wolf. Brewster had never heard of it, and that made his skin crawl. He picked up the phone and called a friend at the Pentagon. A quiet voice answered. This is Langston. Langston, it's Brewster. I've got a name I need you to run. Pause. Go ahead. Lena Morgan. She just ran a rifle range on my base, like it was a goddamn video game. Another pause. Then, you're serious? I want to know who she really is. I've got a base full of soldiers asking. Langston sighed. Give me an hour. Click. Back. On the base, Lena walked the perimeter trail in the fading light, boots crunching softly on gravel. She didn't carry a phone. She didn't like being tracked. Instead, she moved quietly, eyes always scanning. Old habits didn't die, especially not the ones that kept you alive. She passed a young soldier, maybe 19, leaning against the barracks wall, tossing a coin and muttering to himself. He straightened when he saw her. You're the one who beat the colonel, he said, standing. Lena gave a half smile. It wasn't about beating him. He nodded, nervously. Still, that shot. It was crazy. Where'd you learn that? She tilted her head. You want the real answer? He nodded again. In a place no one wants to go back to. He blinked, and she walked on, leaving him frozen, unsure if he just met a ghost. Inside his office, Colonel Brewster's phone rang. Langston, he answered. Don't ask again. What? Red Viper, Langston said quietly. That's what they called her. Ring a bell? Brewster's heart slowed. She wasn't just some field tech, Hank. She was in the Red Cell program, one of the last ones before they shut it down. You remember Red Cells, right? Brewster leaned back slowly. Red Cells were urban legends among soldiers. Teams trained to infiltrate, disrupt, and outshoot even the best. Used only for black operations, embassy rescues, and deep cover work. There were fewer than a dozen. She was one of them? Brewster asked. She was the best one. Until Kandahar. That word again. Kandahar. Langston continued, voice low. They lost 6 operators in a botched extraction. She saved the only surviving SEAL, dragged him out of a collapsed tunnel after her own team was hit. She refused a medal. Didn't want the politics. Just walked. Brewster ran a hand down his face. She's not a civilian, Hank. She's a ghost. Be glad she's not angry. Click. The next morning, Brewster called a meeting. His team, Travis Hensley, Lieutenant Park, gathered in the debrief room, waiting. The colonel walked in, slower than usual, eyes bloodshot. He said only one thing. She's not one of us. She's above us. Way above. There was silence. Hensley scratched his head. Is she a spook? Spooks report to her, Brewster said flatly. Park laughed once, then stopped when no one joined him. She beat us fair, Travis said. What now? We don't try to beat her, Brewster said. We ask her to teach. Lena wasn't surprised when the invitation arrived. A formal request. Lead a one-day advanced marksmanship workshop for select personnel. She stared at it for a long time. She hadn't taught in years, but something inside her, something buried since the war stirred not pride, purpose. On the day of the workshop, 20 soldiers showed up. Only 10 were chosen. The others sat to watch. Lena stood at the range line with nothing but an M14 and a single strip of tape across her left forearm, black with red lines. A sign from the old days. Red Viper. She didn't talk much. Instead, she showed breathing, wind reading, trigger discipline, movement. One by one, the soldiers fired. One by one, she corrected them. Without anger, without ego. You're fighting the gun, she told one. Let it do its job. You just guide it. By the end of the day, even the colonel watched from a corner, quiet, arms folded. Later, as the sun dropped behind the trees, Lena packed up. Brewster walked over. No tricks this time, he said, almost smiling. No tricks last time, she replied. He looked at her for a long moment. You ever think about coming back? She glanced at the flagpole. I never really left, she said. Then she turned and walked away, the dust swirling behind her. And Brewster, Colonel Hank Brewster, respected her more than any soldier he'd ever known. Because in her silence, in her calm, in her impossible shot, was a truth no rank could command. Colonel Brewster wasn't a man who liked feeling small. But ever since Lena Morgan stepped onto Fort Gunner's firing range, he had been shrinking slowly, day by day, ego first. And while he had the good sense to recognize Lena's skill and respect her background, the competitor in him couldn't rest. Word of her legacy Red Viper had now spread far beyond base lines. Even retired officers were emailing him, asking if it was true. Was that Lena Morgan, the one from Kandahar, really walking around his base, training his soldiers like some mythical warrior returned from the shadows? Yes, she was, and it was. Driving him crazy? He wanted to reclaim something. Not pride, exactly, but control. So he decided to play one card he still had: public performance. The base held an annual marksmanship showcase. Soldiers, instructors, even a few federal agencies gathered for friendly competition. This year's event was 10 days away. Brewster decided to use it as his stage. He personally visited Lena that evening, finding her in the base armory, cleaning rifles. She wasn't surprised to see him. "Miss Morgan," he said, hands behind his back. "I have a proposal." She glanced at him. "Go on." "The Gunner Gauntlet is coming up. 3-person teams. Mixed roles. I want you to lead one." She raised an eyebrow. "Why me?" He smiled tightly. "Because every squad here is secretly hoping you don't compete." That made her laugh. Not loud, but honest. "Fine," she said, "but I picked my team." "Of course," he said, masking his surprise. "And one more thing," she added. "We use M14s. Iron sights only." His brow furrowed. "You sure?" She nodded. "Takes away the toys. Makes it about instinct." He couldn't argue. She was right. Lena spent the next few days watching soldiers, observing quietly. She wasn't interested in rank or resume. She watched for how they moved, how they reacted. She picked 2. Private Emilia Chun, a sniper trainee with calm hands and a deadly eye. Young, untested but sharp. Sergeant Cole Rivas, mid-30s, close combat specialist, never missed a drill. A quiet leader. She brought them together one morning under the shade of the old barracks. "This won't be easy," she said. "The other teams will rely on gear, tech, and ego. We won't. We'll rely on rhythm and each other." They nodded. They were in. Word spread fast. The Red Viper was forming a team for the Gauntlet. Soldiers sharpened their skills. Special Forces units across the state suddenly requested slots. Even a D squad confirmed they'd join the event. Brewster watched from his office window. Soldiers were pushing harder, training longer, working smarter. He grumbled, but deep down, he was proud. The day before the Gauntlet, Lena gathered her team near the range at dawn. She laid out gear. Old school packs, iron sight rifles, minimal optics. "We'll win because we adapt," she told them. "Not because we shoot the fastest, but because we move with purpose." Rivas asked, "What if they target us early?" She smiled. "Let them." The Gauntlet began at sunrise. 10 teams, multiple courses. Timed shooting, obstacle movement, live strategy simulation. Lena's team stayed calm, while others rushed through the first challenge, target accuracy. Her team stayed measured. Chun hit every shot. Second course, terrain sprint and blind fire under pressure. Rivas moved like a tank, silent but unstoppable. By the time they reached the hostage extraction simulation, Lena's team had climbed to second place behind the FBI's elite hostage rescue team. That final round was where everything changed. Setup. Enter a structure. Clear it. locate the hostage, and extract without triggering any fatal alerts. Other teams went fast too fast. Doors kicked open. Fake IEDs tripped. Lena paused outside the first entrance, whispering, "Listen." She signaled Rivez left, shone to the perch, herself through the shadows. No shouting, no chaos, just quiet control. 2 minutes in, they cleared 3 rooms. 5 minutes in, they secured the hostage and were already on the way out. 6 minutes. Flat, no errors. The announcer read it aloud as the crowd erupted. Colonel Brewster stared in disbelief. She hadn't just competed, she dominated. After the competition, Lena stood quietly near the mess hall as soldiers clapped, cheered, and talked about her like a legend. Colonel Brewster approached, clapping slowly. "Well," he said, "I suppose. It's official now." "What is?" she asked. "You're the most dangerous person on this base," she chuckled. "I always was." He laughed with her this time. "You know, when I first saw you, I thought you were here to observe. Civilian curiosity." "I was," she said. "But then you mocked me." He raised a brow. "And that changed your mind?" "No," she said, eyes steady. "That reminded me who I was." As the sky turned orange and the sun dipped behind the Fort Gunner horizon, Lena walked the now empty range alone. She set up one last paper target. She didn't measure the distance. She didn't check wind. She didn't even line up carefully. She just fired. One shot, dead center. Colonel Brewster watched from a distance. That shot, quiet, perfect, humble, was her signature. And in that moment, he understood something no field report or military file could ever explain. Some warriors don't wear stripes. They don't ask for permission. They just show up. And make everyone around them better. 2 days after the gauntlet, Lena became a living legend on Fort Gunner. She didn't seek attention, but attention found her. Soldiers who once scoffed now saluted. Recruits asked for training tips. Senior officers quietly requested one-on-one sessions. She turned down most of them. Lena hadn't come for fame. She came to feel again, to wake up the parts of her that war had left frozen. But Colonel Brewster had one more idea. One more chance to test the line between tradition and transformation. Proposed a direct match. Not for pride, not for spectacle. For evolution. He called it. The rifle speaks. The rules were simple. 2 shooters. 1 rifle model, standard issue M14. Iron sights only. 5 challenges. 1 winner? The prize? Nothing more than silence. And maybe clarity. Colonel Brewster didn't want to beat Lena. Not anymore. But he needed to face her, because deep down, he knew that the world was changing. That warriors didn't look like they used to. That strength came without uniform, without swagger, and he needed to know if his way still held weight. Lena said yes on one condition. No audience, she told him. Just us, and whoever's on the range at 0600. He agreed, and at sunrise, they stood side by side at the shooting line alone, except for Sergeant Rivas, who volunteered to judge quietly from the side. The air was still. The desert wind hadn't woken yet. First challenge, Rivas called. Timed precision. 10 targets. Closest grouping wins. Brewster nodded and stepped up first. Years of muscle memory kicked in. One shot after another, fast, clean, clustered. Not perfect, but damn close. Lena moved like water. No tension, no hesitation. Her bullets grouped tighter. Almost surgical. Round 1, Lena, Rivas announced. Brewster grunted. Thought so. Second challenge, long-range snapshot. A 400-yard metal plate hidden behind 2 barriers. 5 seconds to acquire, aim, and shoot. Brewster fired. Hit left edge. Barely. Lena didn't rush. Her shot rang out half a second before the buzzer. Dead center. Rivas blinked. Confirmed center impact. Brewster didn't say a word. Just gave her a sharp nod. Third challenge. Movement. Fire 5 rounds while walking diagonally across the range. This was his favorite controlled movement under pressure. Brewster went first. 3 hits, 2 misses. Lena followed. 4 hits, 1 miss. Lena again, Rivas muttered, impressed. The colonel scratched his chin. You always this good? No, she said. I'm better with purpose. 4th challenge. 0 light shot. No visual confirmation. Just sound and feel. They each had to fire at a target blindfolded, using only instruction and instinct. Brewster hesitated. He hated guessing. His shot hit 2 inches below center. Lena lifted her rifle, breathed once, and fired. Half-inch below center, Rivas said. Whistling. Brewster shook his head, laughing. You don't miss, do you? She looked. Downrange. Only when it matters. He studied her. That answer wasn't cocky. It was haunted. Final challenge. Sniper discipline. Hit a moving target, but wait for a precise visual cue. A red flash, 5 seconds in. Shoot too early, you're disqualified. Brewster's instincts fired too soon. He shot at 4.5 seconds. Target. Down, but penalty. Lena waited. 5.2 seconds. Flash dash boom. Perfect shot. No penalty. Rivas stood. Clean sweep. Lena wins. Brewster slung his rifle down and turned toward her. Hell, he muttered. Then louder, you're not just good. You're built for this. Lena didn't smile. I was built for something else. This just stayed with me. They sat together on the bench afterward, rifles leaning beside them like old dogs. You know, Brewster said, I didn't call you out that first day just to mock you. I know, she said. I saw something. But I didn't understand it yet. I thought you'd surprise the men. Maybe hit the target once. Make a point. I never imagined. He trailed off. You saw a problem you couldn't name, Lena said. Then you tried to shoot at it. He chuckled. You always talk like that? Only when I'm tired. They sat in silence for a while. Then Brewster asked, You ever think about going active again? No, she said, but you're training, helping. That's different. I'm not going back into shadows. I want to teach in the open. He nodded slowly. We could use that. The army, I mean. Leadership without a loud voice. Leadership doesn't shout, she said. It breathes. That evening, something unexpected happened. A small gathering formed in the rec hall. Soldiers had heard about the morning match not from gossip, but from observation. They hadn't cheered or chanted. Instead, they just watched as Lena passed by. Some saluted. Others nodded with respect, but no one clapped. Because what Lena had earned wasn't applause. It was something far rarer on a base like Fort Gunner. Reverence. Later that night, Brewster updated his personal log. He kept one not for the army, but for himself. Log entry, July 12, 2025. Today, I was outshot in every category by someone who doesn't carry rank, who doesn't care about medals, who walked into this base and reminded me what a real warrior looks like. Lena Morgan. She's not here for the army. She's here for the future. And the rest of us? We better start listening. And out on the range just before midnight, Lena fired one last round, not for training, not for war, just to remind herself. The rifle still spoke, and she still understood its language. Rain fell on Fort Gunner for the first time in weeks. It wasn't heavy, just enough to mute the world and force reflection. Lena sat alone beneath the overhang outside the supply depot, her boots resting on the wet concrete, a thermos of black coffee steaming in her hands. The rifle range was closed due to weather, but her mind was anything but quiet. The morning after her one-on-one match with Colonel Brewster, she had received a sealed envelope No return name. Just a pentagon seal, stamped in deep red wax. Inside was a letter, Red Viper. We've watched long enough. Come home. One last stop. Your call. Lena's hands hadn't trembled in a long time, but they did now. She thought she was done. She wanted to be done. And yet, here they were reaching back into her life, into the shadows she fought to escape. She folded the paper, eyes cold again. Colonel Brewster knocked once and sat beside her without asking. I saw the courier, he said. She nodded. Are you going? Not sure yet. He was quiet for a while and asked, Is it dangerous? They wouldn't need me if it wasn't, she replied, eyes fixed on the falling rain. He studied her face. Why would you go? I lost people, she said. Kandahar. We never got closure. There was more to that mission than they admitted. This might be a thread I can pull. Brewster exhaled. You think they'll let you pull it without strings? They know better than to try. Back in his office, Brewster picked up a red phone. No number pad. Just one button. When someone answered, he said, This is Brewster. She got the letter. A pause. Then, does she intend to act? She hasn't said. Should we prepare for exposure? Brewster hesitated. If she decides to move, you won't be able to stop her. You can only hope she's on your side. Click. He leaned back in his chair, eyes on the ceiling. The world had changed. The threats weren't loud anymore. They were surgical, hidden, threaded between politics and plausible deniability. And Lena Morgan was one of the few capable of cutting straight through them. That night, Lena returned to the chapel. She always did when decisions weighed heavy. She lit a candle beneath the memorial wall, her fingers brushing over the etched names of the lost. Staff Sergeant Dallas, she whispered. Lieutenant Colton. Ramirez. The last name was hard to speak. Captain Elise Monroe, her best friend, her partner in shadows. Killed in the tunnels of Kandahar, shielding Lena from the blast. No grave, no recognition. Just a name on a wall. Because Lena had insisted. The op had been buried, along with the truth. And now, maybe, there was a crack in that silence. The following morning, she met with Colonel Brewster behind the motor pool. No uniforms. No rank. Just two warriors in a storm of questions. I'll go, she said. He nodded, unsurprised. Leave tonight. I need a transport to Arlington. Quiet, unlogged. I can make that happen, Brewster said. But I want one thing in return. She raised an eyebrow. When it's over, he said, come back. Not just to train, to lead. She looked away, then back. I'm not a colonel. No, he said, but they'd follow you into fire. That's more than any pin on a lapel. That night, under cover of darkness, a nondescript SUV rolled out of Fort Gunter, headlights off until it cleared the perimeter. Inside sat Lena Morgan, dressed in charcoal gray, hair tucked beneath a cap. A duffel beside her carrying only what she needed. A photo of Elise Monroe, her old field knife, and her. 14. The same one. She used to make the shot that changed everything. She didn't know what. Lay ahead, not exactly. But she knew one thing. She wasn't chasing ghosts anymore. She was hunting the truth. 3 days later, Brewster stood at the range. The same spot where Lena had first asked for just one shot. It felt different now, quieter, like the range itself was waiting. He found Private Chun and Sergeant Rivas training recruits with the same no-nonsense style Lena had drilled into them. She said to keep pushing, Chun told him. No half measures. She say when she'd be back? Brewster asked. No, Rivas replied. But she said she'd return when it matters. And back in Washington, D.C., in a dimly lit operations center buried 5 stories beneath the Capitol, a red dot blinked on a secure map. Operator tag. RV status. Active. Mission. Unknown. But everyone monitoring that screen knew one thing: when Red Viper was active, someone was about to pay for secrets long buried. The Arlington safe house was built like a dentist's office, boring, beige, invisible. But inside, it was anything but. Fingerprint locks, shielded walls, one-way mirrors. The kind of place where decisions were made with no paper trail, and answers were given with nods, not memos. Lena Morgan walked in. Without knocking. 3 men in suits stood from a table cluttered with red folders, satellite images, and surveillance stills. They didn't greet her by name. They didn't need to. She dropped her duffel at the door. "Let's get to it," she said. One of the suits slid a folder toward her. The mission was unofficial. No backing, no recognition. Just a classified objective with old fingerprints. Op. Name. Shadowlance. Target. Armand Dasturi. A name she hadn't heard in 8 years. She stared at the photos, grainy but familiar. Dasturi had been a ghost broker during the Kandahar operation. A facilitator. Arms, intel, movement of hostiles. The CIA believed he died in the tunnel collapse that took Elise and the rest of her team. But they were wrong. Dasturi had resurfaced. Not in Afghanistan, in Virginia. Running operations through black market cyber arms from U.S. soil, under false identities. And Lena's shot at justice had just reloaded. Meanwhile, at Fort Gunner, Colonel Brewster stood in front of 30 soldiers. Effective. Immediately, he said, "We're forming a new division." The board behind him read, Raven Group, the mission, Tactical Intelligence and Urban Response Unit. He paused. "It's going to be different. Less rank, more precision." Lena Morgan showed us something, what it looks like when skill outweighs stripes. If she returns, this will be her command. The soldiers exchanged looks. Some nodded. None objected. He added, "Until then, we train her way." Private Chun whispered to Rivas, "You think she come back?" "She never really left," he replied. In Arlington, Lena prepared. She had. 2 days before Dasturi's meeting, a private transfer disguised as a fundraiser at an embassy-protected estate. Too secure for SWAT, too political for CIA. But Lena had never played by borders or excuses. She studied floor plans, memorized the route patterns of the guards, and reviewed every thermal snapshot. She wasn't going in loud. She was going in alone. A ghost among uniforms. The night of the op, rain swept through D.C. like a cleansing. Lena moved through it without a trace, dressed in black, hair pinned back, gear tucked tight against her body. Her rifle, an M14 with a suppressed barrel, rested. In a slim guitar case. She moved past checkpoints with forged credentials. Her badge read, Embassy Tech Consultant. Inside, the estate was marble and gold too rich to notice someone who didn't want to be seen. Through mirrored hallways and towering stairwells, she climbed toward the penthouse suite where Dasturi would be negotiating the sale of a prototype military A package, the same kind stolen during the Kandahar mission. The betrayal had begun long before the ambush. And now it would end. She reached the balcony ledge 3 floors up, boots planted, rifle unfolded in under 4 seconds. The shot required calculation, angle, glass thickness, body armor, movement. One breath. One name in her head. Elise. Boom. The window cracked. Inside, panic, screams, but Dasturi didn't fall. He staggered, bleeding shoulder hit, not heart. Shallow. Lena cursed. She'd aimed to end it, but he moved last second. The mission had changed. She had to finish it up close. Inside the estate, chaos erupted. Security scrambled. Radios barked in clipped Arabic and Russian. But Lena was already moving, vaulting a balcony, sliding through a hallway, and knocking out a guard in one swift elbow before he could reach his cones. She pushed through the second. Floor reaching the suite, gun up out inside. Dasturi clutched his bleeding shoulder. He looked older, fatter, but his eyes recognized her instantly. "You," he gasped. "No more tunnels," she said. "No more shadows." He lunged, pulling a pistol from under the table, but Lena had already moved, one round to the thigh. He dropped, screamed out. She approached slowly. "You buried my team." He spat blood. "Your government buried them." She stopped cold. "What did you say?" "Ask your handlers," he hissed. "They leaked the mission. They needed casualties to stall the deal. You were pawns." It hit her like a second shot. Her friends hadn't died in battle. They'd been sacrificed for politics. Back at Fort Gunner, Brewster was in his office when his phone lit up. One word message. Done. He leaned back, exhaling. She did it. Then, after a pause, but what did it cost her? Lena disappeared that night. The estate went dark. The files vanished. Dasturi, officially listed as deceased in a gas explosion. The government, as always, had a story ready. But Lena didn't return to the safe house. She left a note instead. They lied to all of us. I'm not done yet. Keep training them. I'll be watching. And just like that, the ghost vanished again. But this time, she wasn't running from the shadows. She was chasing them. 3 weeks passed. Fort Gunner rolled on with daily drills, desert wind, and the same chalky air that always seemed to cling to skin and memory. But beneath the routine, everything had changed, especially for Colonel Brewster. Each day, he trained. A new Raven Group unit, harder, faster, sharper. He used Lena's philosophies. Fewer commands, more instinct. Soldiers weren't barking orders. They were thinking, flowing, adapting. And the results? Unmistakable. Within 2 weeks, the team beat the record on Fort Gunner's Tier 5 response course. And they did it with Lena's gear, Lena's methods, and Lena's calm embedded in every shot. Still, she hadn't come back. Then one morning, Brewster entered his office to find a package. No return address. Just a single black ribbon wrapped around a plain, military-issue lockbox. Inside were 3 things. A challenge coin from the defunct Red Cell unit, gleaming gold with a serpent etched around the words, "Precision is purpose." A USB drive labeled simply, "For Brewster." And a photo one she hadn't shared before. It showed Lena, Elise Monroe, and 4 others in dusty combat gear, standing under a tattered flag in front of a collapsed compound wall. Brewster turned it over. On the back, written in Lena's handwriting, only the forgotten know what really happened. He plugged in the USB. Footage loaded, hidden camera clips, memos, deep state video call recordings. Proof of internal sabotage during the Kandahar operation. A meeting in D.C. where 2 defense officials, both now retired, discussed calculated attrition to delay a defense contract that would have exposed financial fraud. Brewster's fists clenched. Lena had found it. All of it. And she hadn't leaked it to the press. She trusted him. A note followed at the end of the video. Release it if you must, but be ready to protect the ones who still serve honestly. This isn't revenge. It's repair. He stood, his throat tight. This wasn't just a win. It was justice. Without ceremony. Without fanfare. Just the rifle speaking again. Only this time, through truth. That evening, Brewster gathered the Raven Group. He stood in front of them without notes in his range gear. 3 years ago, this unit didn't exist. 3 months ago, we wouldn't have believed a civilian could walk onto our range and outperform every one of us. And 3 weeks ago, she vanished without saying goodbye. He paused, but she didn't leave us empty-handed. She left us a system, a new way to think, and a reminder that honor isn't worn, it's lived. He held up the red cell coin. This, he said, isn't about the past. It's our new standard. Then he dropped it into a steel ammo box. If you want it, earn it. Hundreds of miles away, Lena sat at a quiet diner near a small-town train stop in Idaho. She wore civilian jeans and an old hoodie. A waitress refilled her coffee. Across the booth sat Marcus Dell, the only surviving SEAL from her Kandahar team. Beard longer, eyes older. He'd gone off-grid after his medical discharge. You did it, he said. Lena stirred her coffee. Not all of it, but enough. You could have burned them, he said. Those officials. The press would have. Eaten it up. I wasn't after spectacle, she said. I just wanted them out of the way. He nodded. And now? She looked out the window as a freight train rumbled past. Now I watch, she said. There are more like them people who treat soldiers like pawns. But there are also more. Like Brewster, and Shun, and Rivas. They're why I didn't quit. He raised his mug. To ghosts that fight loud. She smiled faintly and tapped her mug to his. To quiet wars that matter. Back at Fort Gunner, things slowly shifted. The Pentagon reviewed the footage Lena had uncovered. Quiet retirements followed. Internal investigations launched. And without public scandal, reforms were quietly ushered in. It was how real change often happened without headlines. And at the base, Raven Group became the highest performing unit in its region. Not because they were flashy, but because they moved with purpose. They carried no slogans. No chants, only one silent ritual. Each member, upon passing final qualification, touched the red cell coin before walking off the range. Not for luck, for legacy. Months later, on a foggy morning, Private Chung received a package. Inside, a custom scope she'd once admired, a handwritten note, and a challenge coin of her own. The note read, "Keep your breath steady, your shots true, and your voice sharp. You're not a trainee anymore. You're a teacher now." Aliyesh Chun didn't cry. She just put the coin in her pocket and got back to work. Colonel Brewster sometimes walked the range alone. Every now and then, he'd stop at Lane 5, the spot where Lena had first asked to fire. He'd stare at the mark, where her bullet had landed, still there, still untouched, and he'd whisper, "You were right." Then walk on. And as for Lena Morgan, no one ever quite saw her again. Some say she joined a private intel firm. Others say she trains black ops teams in the Balkans. A few believe she vanished completely. But on certain ranges, under certain winds, instructors still tell a story about the woman a colonel mocked, who made one shot and rewrote the rules of what strength really means. The end.